Now here's where it gets interesting, because we've been focusing on HTTP GET all this time. You know there are a number of different HTTP verbs out there. The most popular one besides GET is POST, right? Yeah? When do you use POST? Say again? To add something, absolutely, yes. So if I'm in Amazon right now and I'm looking for books on Google, I type in Google and I get a list back of books. I get a list back on books. HTTP GET, I get a list back on books. I'm looking for a book on Grails, type in Grails, HTTP get the representation back. But when I'm about to place my order for a book, Groovy Recipes is a very good book. I highly recommend it, yeah? But whatever book you choose, when you're getting ready to submit your order, you're not making an HTTP GET anymore. If you looked at the form, it would say form method equals POST. And there are a number of reasons for that, of course. You might not want to have all the name-value pairs up on the query string like that. You might want to have them included in the body of that. But it's the semantics of it as well. That GET is meant for retrieving these resources. POST, as you said, are meant for inserting new resources in. Have you ever been clicking back on your browser button? You go back, 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 back. What happens if you get to a form that's been an HTTP post? Does your browser warn you? It says, do you really want to submit this form again? And again, if you've bought Groovy Recipes, I say, yes, you do. Say, yes, okay, buy your additional books and it'll go. But I mean, most of the time, it's really trying to make sure that you don't redo those kinds of things that you might not want to redo. The $20 word for that are idempotent requests. An HTTP GET is idempotent. You can get over and over again, and it won't change the state of the server. But if you do an HTTP post, or a put or a delete, as we'll talk about here, those are non-idempotent requests. So GET is like retrieving, POST is like inserting, put is for updates, PU, update, U is in there, put is for updates, and deletes are for deletes. What you're beginning to see now is you're beginning to see a CRUD formation happen, aren't we? CRUD, create, retrieve, update, delete. I could sit you down in front of any database, couldn't I? And if I said, quick, get me all the records out of the person table, what would you type in? Select splat from person, semicolon, right? If you wanted to insert into the database, you'd say insert into person. If you wanted to update, update person. If you want to delete from person, delete person. We have SQL. That means that whether we're dealing with Oracle or Postgres or MySQL or any of these databases, we have a standard set of verbs we use to interact. REST is like the sequel of web services. Whatever RESTful web services are out there, you instantly know how to deal with it through get, put, post, and delete. And just like primary keys in a database are the way you uniquely identify records in a database, what you're looking up at here is a URI. Now, most of the time we call them URLs, Uniform Resource Locators, yeah, but Rastafarians call these URIs, Uniform Resource Identifiers, exactly. This is the primary key of that record in the web. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's remarkably simple once you look at it, but having explained to you, you say, oh, yeah, I do that all the time. So let me show you briefly how you could set up a set of RESTful web services in Grails. Now, Grails is a web framework that is implemented in Groovy, but it's really Spring under the covers. It's Hibernate under the covers. It's Xerxes, it's Ant, it's JUnit. It's all the Java classes you would expect. But if I come in here quickly and I'm able to say Grails, create app, let's say I want to create a bookstore. Excuse me. Grails will blast out a directory structure for me. You'll see that there's now a bookstore in here. I come into my bookstore and I say, well, you know, I probably would like to sell some books if I could, so I'll say, please create a domain class book for me. Creates the domain class and the unit test, very important, you're testing, yeah? And we come in here right now and say, if you would please, I'd like to create a controller for my book class. So we come in here right now. Here's my bookstore application with my domain class book. Come in here and I say, well, a book ought to have a title, a book ought to have an author. Yeah, that's probably good enough for right now. And I go into my controller and I say, I'd like you to scaffold this out for me, please. I'd like you to give me a full CRUD application. So how many lines of code have I written so far? 1, 2, 3. That's about enough. I'm kind of tired. Let's go ahead and run this application, don't you think? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. This is an example I use quite a bit. So I'm going to clean, and then I'm going to do a quick Grails run app. Grails ships with its own servlet container, Jetty, but I can type in Grails War and deploy it to Tomcat or JBoss or WebSphere WebLogic. Grails ships with its own embedded database, HSQLDB, but I could point it to Oracle or DB2 or MySQL. And in that amount of time, I now have a web application up and running at localhost 9090 bookstore. Let's see what that looks like. Ah, there we go. I can come in here. My buddy Mark Richards is in the front row here. What's the title of your book, Mark? Java Message Service. All right. Because he's got another book out. You know, it's probably less understood, but he's also written a book called Fun with Cheese. So, yeah, you get the idea here. Lots of things, and I'll add myself in here as well. So Scott Davis has a book, GIS for Web Developers. And we could go on, but you can see this is a full application in here, something that allows me to sort out my columns, allows me to do the full create, retrieve, update, and delete. You know, my standard joke is he's got a new version of this book out right now. It's really good, Fun with Cheese 2.0. I highly recommend it. You know, so we begin seeing that I've got this much coming on. Isn't Grails amazing? I love this web framework. It's incredible. But we're here to talk about RESTful web services. And so being able to come back to Grails, where are you at, Grails? You're hiding from me. There we go. Being able to come back to Grails now in this controller and be able to say, all right, well, I want to pull in my converters class. So now, in addition to scaffolding out all that HTML or create, retrieve, update, delete kind of things, I also want to be able to come in here and be able to get an XML list. Render book list as XML. One line. I could also do a JSON list if I wanted to. I could do the same thing. Render book list as JSON as we come along in here. So being able to not only provide the HTML interface, but being able to provide, I got to spell it correctly, the XML representation of that. Yeah? And again, one line of code as we come along in here. If we had more time, I would take you through the entire create, retrieve, update, delete cycle. But if you Google for mastering Grails REST, this is an article I wrote for IBM DeveloperWorks that walks you through how to do the full get, put, post, delete version of these kinds of things. And you'll see at the end of it, I'll pull this up in just a second, but as you'll see, it's about 50 lines of code, all told and done, to implement the get, put, post, and delete. Oh, the internet has been so friendly to me, and now it goes away.